Good evening and welcome. I'm Winslow Swan, and I'm inviting you to join me as I read from a book called Creepy Short Horror Stories to Read to the Creature in the Closet. This is a short story book that I wrote after I did the Thing Under the Bed series, which is 3 books. And you can find all of my books at Amazon.com, as well as all the ebooks everywhere, Walmart, Barnes & Noble, and what have you. The story I picked out for tonight is called Murder is So Hard. And with any kind of creepy story or ghost story, it should be listened to with the lights out. There is nothing like a dark room to attract ghosts. And you may want to have some of our mutual friends come and listen with you. So, are the lights out? Doors closed? Blinds drawn? Excellent. Now, don't worry about the ghosts getting in, because they can slither through keyholes and under doors, you know. Now just be quiet. Hear that slithering? Ah, good. Now that we're all here, we can begin. As I said, this is called Murder is So Hard. Henry Ward stood behind his desk in his small and cramped office. The gun still in his shaking hand, the smell of ozone heavy in the air. His eyes had not blinked once since he had pulled the trigger. Lying on the floor, a pool of blood surrounding his head and growing wider from the hole in it, was Frank Malone, CEO and president of the accounting firm. The look of shock was still etched on his face, and a small trickle of blood had made its way down his forehead and on to his nose. For a brief moment, Henry giggled. The small sound broke the stillness of the office. He finally lowered his hand and, perhaps for the first time, felt the weight of the gun. He had not realized how heavy that it was when he had first purchased it more than a month ago. Until Frank had walked into the office, he had forgotten that he had put it in the upper right-hand desk drawer. It had been just that long ago that he had discovered the discrepancies in the books, just a few at first, which really had not amounted to much money. As he began to investigate further, he noticed much larger amounts that even he could not fathom. The calculating was almost brilliant had it not been against the law. After a few weeks of staying late in the office and back-checking, he had come to the conclusion that the only one who could have possibly been pilfering from the client accounts was indeed the head of the entire operation. "You've been working a lot of hours, Mr. Ward," Frank Malone had said one day, passing him in the hallway. "I always like to see extra effort from my employees." "Thank you, sir," Henry had said. "Just remember," Frank told him, "don't let the job become your life." His life? Henry peeked over the side of the desk, dropping the gun onto the oak as he looked at the prostrate body of his now deceased employer. He felt a slight feeling of nausea and fought down the urge to vomit. The blood pool was getting wider, and the dead eyes of Frank Malone were starting to glaze over, giving them a milky white glow. The smell of death had replaced the odor of the gunfire. "Now what?" Henry asked aloud. The sound of his voice startled him a little, and he looked around nervously. Yes, Henry Ward had committed murder. It had been a good cause, he told himself. It was either going to be him or me. I certainly did not want to die. Anyway, he was a callous bastard who deserved exactly what he got. "Hell of a shot," he said to the corpse. Even Henry was amazed at the accuracy with which he had dispatched his employer. It was as if the bullet had known exactly which body part would be the most efficient. A shot directly into the head certainly did the trick. Only now Henry was stuck in an office building on a Friday night at 6 o'clock with a corpse and a smoking gun. Perhaps, he thought, he had not really thought the whole process out. "They say people who commit murder make 31 mistakes right off the bat," he told the corpse. I guess killing you was the first one." He sat down in his metal chair, the only one that he had since starting with the firm, and placed his head on the desk. His brain was sending mixed signals to his body, telling it to get the hell out of there. But his body was refusing to do anything but sit like a lump of worthless clay. "So then get rid of the body, you idiot!" Henry sat upright, rigid and frightened. He definitely had heard someone, and he was absolutely sure that it had not come from his imagination. "Down here, dummy!" Henry stood up anxiously, again slowly peeking over the desk. For a moment he thought that he was asleep, his head lying restlessly on the desk, dreaming the nightmare that must come with someone who has just committed murder. "No, you're not dreaming," the corpse that had once been Frank Malone said. The body was still stiff and prostrate. Blood was still pooling around the head and shoulders. But the eyes, those white, milky, dead eyes, were looking right at Henry. Henry slapped himself a few times. The last one hurt him to the point that he had left a red mark on his cheek. "Told you, idiot," the corpse said. I'm sorry, Mr. Malone," Henry stuttered. "I'm sorry, Mr. Malone," the corpse mocked back. "You're sorry? You kill me and you are sorry? For God's sake, it was only a few $1,000,000. You couldn't just have put me in jail?" "Now wait a minute, you were going to kill me, remember?" Henry said. "Of course I remember. Don't be so dramatic," the corpse admonished. "What did you think that I was going to do when you left that note in my office? Throw you a party?" Henry remembered what had transpired earlier in the day. He had made careful preparations to confront Mr. Malone after closing time, when the employees had all gone to their own perfect little lives outside the corporate confines of the office. He had snipped out letter after letter from newspapers and magazines, carefully gluing them onto a piece of stationery from the office. He had included photocopies of his findings and made sure that the originals were safely put away. He had gone to work that morning as normal, saying hello and good morning to the other accountants, picking up his coffee from the small kitchen and then going to his own office. Around noon, he had found out that Mr. Frank Malone would be in a meeting on the other side of town. It was then that he had dropped off the note. "Why only 5,000? the corpse asked Henry. "It was only $4,132.78, Henry corrected. "Accountants," the corpse muttered. "Always has to be to the last penny, doesn't it?" "That is the cost of the repairs to my car," Henry told him. "The one that you smashed into a few weeks ago." "Are you serious?" Frank the corpse asked. "If that wasn't bad enough," Henry continued, "you made sure that the insurance company would not pay by making it look like the whole thing was my fault." "Well, it was your fault." "Shut up, you, or you will shoot me again," the corpse finished the sentence. Henry sat down in his chair again and tried to fathom out what was happening to him. This had to be a bad dream. "It wasn't just the money," Henry said softly. "You killed my mother." "Hey, stupid! You're going to have to stand up so I can see your ugly face. I can't exactly move right now. I have this condition known as a bullet in the head." Henry stood up again, hoping that the corpse would no longer be there. Unfortunately, it was. "Now, do you want to tell me how I could have possibly killed your mother?" the corpse asked. "The money that you stole from one of the accounts happened to be hers," Henry told him. "She lost everything. It was your greedy fault. How many others have you killed?" The corpse smiled, blood dripping from its nose onto its teeth. "Only the stupid ones," the corpse said. "Only the ones who handed me the money and the knife to stab them with. Only the idiots who have no idea how the real world works when it comes to money." Frank Malone, now a corpse, seemed to be very proud of what he had done. He began to regale Henry of the many times that he had simply changed the decimal point and became a little richer, all at the cost of someone else. "You see, Henry," the corpse said, "there are givers and there are takers. I simply belong to the latter." "Not any more you don't," Henry told the body on the floor. "What did all of that get you, Mr. Malone?" "A very quick bullet to the head." Now both the corpse and the killer had seemed proud of their work. "Okay, genius," the corpse began slowly. "What are your plans now?" Henry thought for a moment and said, "I'm not sure." "Well, at least you committed your little crime on a Friday night," the corpse seemed to compliment its murderer. "You have all weekend to try and clean everything up." "All weekend?" Henry asked. "Do you really want the others to find a body on your floor lying in a pool of blood with a smoking gun on the desk and you sitting talking to it? Why don't you just stick your foot in a bucket of water and place your finger in the light socket and save the state a lot of time and money?" the corpse said. "You were going to kill me first," Henry said again. "Of course I was going to kill you," the corpse bellowed out. "Don't you think that I knew what you were really doing, Henry Ward? Working all of those late nights over accounts that had been closed out for years didn't fool anyone, especially me. Here, look in my coat pocket." Henry took a deep breath and made his way around the desk. He knelt down on the floor and pensively patted around the pocket of the dead man. His eyes grew wide again when he felt the distinct outline of a gun. He looked up at the grimacing face of the corpse. "You were going to shoot me?" Henry asked. "Oh, hell no," the corpse said. "I had entirely different plans for you. I was simply going to make you jump out of the window after I made you write a nice suicide note. Oh, I had it all planned, Henry Ward. You were going to be my fall guy." "What are you talking about?" Henry asked. "Go look on my desk," the corpse said. "I knew what you were up to. I just didn't think that you had it in you to kill me. So, using my own skills, I made it look like you had been embezzling the company. I even have your pitiful $5,000 in cash in an envelope on my desk. You would write the note, leaving the money on the desk, and I was going to throw you out the window." "No!" Henry shouted. "You couldn't do it!" "Do you honestly think that you were the first person to ever discover what I was doing?" the corpse asked. "You mean—" "Yes, Henry, I am a killer," the corpse admitted. "Who would think that a weaselly little worm like you could get off a shot at me, and with such accuracy?" "I don't believe you." "Go down and check in my office. All of the evidence that would have incriminated you is sitting right there, along with the money," the corpse told Henry. "Go ahead and check. I'm not going anywhere." Henry walked down the hallway to the double doors at the end. He noticed the gold plate with the name Frank Malone engraved on it. He quietly opened the door and made his way to the desk at the opposite end of the room. The night skyline was lit up brightly, casting an eerie glow over the office. Henry saw in the pale light exactly what the corpse told him he would find. Even if he managed to cover up the death of his employer, he could never refute the evidence that lay before him. He gathered everything up, including the money, and went back to his own office. "Satisfied?" the corpse said. Henry put the items onto his desk and stared at them. "Now what am I going to do?" Henry asked. "Well," the corpse said, "I think the first thing that you should do is to figure out a way to get rid of the corpse on the floor." "How am I supposed to do that?" Henry asked. "Do I have to come up with every idea?" the corpse asked, and noticed the dumb look that Henry was giving it. "I guess that answers my question. Since there isn't anyone in the building, you can take me down to your car, stuff me in the trunk, and bury me somewhere far away." "I don't think that you will fit," Henry said passively. "Why not? Don't you own a van or some big car?" Frank the corpse asked. "I just traded for a two-door sedan," Henry admitted. "It got better gas mileage." "Oh, for Pete's sake, Henry!" the corpse yelled. "Hey!" Henry blurted in a moment of clarity. "Why can't I throw you out the window and just change the evidence around?" The corpse chuckled. "You really are new to this kind of thing," the corpse said. "How would you explain the bullet hole in my forehead?" A passing pigeon assassin caught me on the way down. Besides, how am I supposed to write a suicide note? I could forge your name, Henry said. This I would like to see, the corpse said. Henry sat behind his desk and began typing on his computer. A few minutes later, he pressed the print key, and the printer on the other side of the room whirred into life. Taking the page, he held the paper up to the corpse. Not bad, Henry, the corpse complimented. You do have a way with words. Henry agreed. As he picked up a pen to scribble Frank's name, the corpse said, I realize that you could just make another copy, but don't you think that you should practice writing my name first? Again, Henry agreed. He meticulously began to write down Frank's name over and over again, copying it from a memo that Henry had saved. The process was slow, but after about 20 times, Henry felt that he could easily forge the corpse's handwriting. Yes, Henry said. That looks pretty good. What do you think? Henry held the note with the scribbled name close so that the corpse could see. Yes, it does look good. Now, what do you intend to do with me? It asked. As you said, I can't just throw you out the window, Henry agreed. Perhaps you frightened a burglar and he shot you and went out. That could be doable, the corpse said. With very little discussion, Henry picked up the corpse and placed it against the only window in his office. He then had to move the corpse again to make sure the window was open before placing it back. Henry stepped back and looked at his employer. The blood had congealed and now stained the face. The bullet hole seemed surreal in the silhouette of the window. Yes, Henry said, I think that will do. I believe so, Frank said. Henry blinked once, then again. The corpse was gone. Not out of the window like Henry thought that it might, but simply had vanished. Henry slowly turned his back toward the open window. His eyes grew wide with terror and horror. There on the opposite side of the office stood Frank Malone, large as life, with an even larger gun in his hand. I don't know what you were thinking about, Henry, Frank said, the gun held fast. You passed out as soon as I told you that no one cheats me. What do you mean? Henry asked, his voice quivering. You found my little secret, Frank said. You left me that note, which must have taken you hours to put together. Oh, I knew that it was you. What really clinched it was the sum of money that you had asked for. Then, when I came in tonight and showed you the gun, you passed out. You must walk in your sleep, Henry. You really helped me out. It's a shame that I have to kill you. After you passed out, I thought that maybe I could just throw you out the window, but I really needed to stick to my plan. Then you jumped up and about scared me to death. You had your eyes closed the entire time. When I realized you were asleep, I just waited. I followed you to my office, watched you get the evidence that I told you about while I was waiting for you to wake up, even watched you type out a suicide note and sign your name to it. Henry, you did everything for me, Frank said. Henry looked down at the desk and saw the evidence, the money, even the note that he himself had typed on his computer. With a look of horror, he saw his name signed perfectly on the suicide note. Sorry, Henry, Frank said. Frank took a running start towards Henry. Henry closed his eyes and waited. Henry opened them again and found himself standing alone in his office. Somehow he had moved over just in time as Frank went sailing out the window. Henry gathered the money and the evidence up and stuffed them into his pocket. He started walking down the hallway towards the elevator, but doubled back. Looking into his office again, he found, much to his relief, that there was no body, no pool of blood, and best of all, no talking corpse that had once been Frank Malone. He sighed again and smiled. He made it to the streets below. He looked up at the building one last time before walking toward the garage where he kept his car. The street was unusually quiet, except for some faint groaning sound. He couldn't quite place it, but it seemed to be coming from the alley that was directly below his office window. Perhaps Frank had survived the fall from the 20th-story window, Henry thought. He broke into a trot down the street. Turning sharply, he went into the alley. What was left of Frank had been split in half by a dumpster. Blood and intestines spilled from the corpse on the alley, and brain matter was leaking from the head. Henry could giggle a little before turning to leave. "Hey, you idiot! You aren't just going to leave me here, are you?" the corpse said. Henry ran straight into the street where a bus, number 17, ran into him, sending him flying back into the alley like a circus acrobat. His head plummeted into the wall, and Henry Ward was sent into oblivion. "Great," the Henry corpse said. "Now what the hell do we do?" The Frank corpse had no answer. Epilogue. The butler did it. I hope you enjoyed this and that you will possibly get your own copy of Creepy Short Horror Stories to read to the creature in the closet. Please check me out on Amazon. Also, I'm on Facebook as well as Twitter. And make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. I'm trying to get as much content as I can up. Is there something behind me? Anyway, hope you enjoyed it, and hopefully be seeing you very, very soon. Until next time, sleep well.